Good, good. So
Great to meet you, John. Looking forward to it.
definitely. John, first of all, before we hop into any type of questions, could you tell us about yourself really quick, especially in the how you ended up in the DevOps environment and what you're working on right now, if
Oh, I've got
possible?
over 20 years experience, so really quick is gonna have to be really, really quick. Uh,
Definitely.
Basically, I started off in the Army. I was an Army reservist and went down to school to become an Army officer in Dahlonega, Georgia, at North Georgia College. But I found myself not wanting to actually go into the regular Army in '96, and I was graduating with a computer science degree, and this whole dot-com boom thing was happening, so I decided to go into computers and started off as a programmer and then found myself on many different adventures and journeys and have now graduated into DevOps. I was there at the beginning of DevOps and have been doing it ever since, and I really enjoy it.
Nice, nice. Good to hear. You probably saw many, many more changes than we saw. Honestly, I mean, for example, I've been in this for 10 years. Adam, I don't know what you, but you're young, so
Yeah. I'm really interested in kind of like how the Army might have also just kind of like prepared you for a software engineering role and a DevOps role. Do you want to maybe just talk about like the contrasts and the comparisons there on what you might have learned?
I definitely I can touch on one thing that is always interesting in the software world. So in the Army, you know your job. You know exactly what your responsibilities are. You basically are given these duties, and those are the duties you take care of, and everything is just lined up, and they're very good at doing that. In the software world, unfortunately, we're really good at saying, "Oh, no, was that your code? No, was that my code? No, that was the build. That was the problem." And a lot of people have problems delineating exactly who's responsible for what, and that's oftentimes a struggle that we try to fix within our teams. Because we do have these, we have somewhat responsibilities. Like I'm over here taking care of some builds or deployments or releases,
Mhm.
and then code breaks and tests break. And was I really the one who was supposed to watch that, or were you supposed to test that before you checked it in? All that fun stuff. The Army has told me that sometimes in this chaotic world of software development, we need a lot more structure and delineated lines of a responsibility. And I
So
try to do that on my teams.
sounds good. So you're the type of person that do you think it's good enough with the roles we have right now? People divide into front and back end. There's other places, even DevOps, type of stuff. There's other places where we go for maybe they say we're cross-functional and everybody is responsible for everything, but maybe nobody is accountable for that. What do you think about it?
I think everybody claims to be a full stack developer, but no, we all have our niches, and you need to be able to identify those and be real. Okay, there are some things that I just cannot do, or I'm not as good at
Hmm.
as maybe my counterpart is. And so, as long as we're true to ourselves, we're not judgmental about it. Finding those lines and front end and back end, I actually do understand that a lot better because I was mostly back end type of development when I was doing developing. I was doing the core functionality. I was doing printer drivers. I was doing, back when printer drivers were actually handled by our own code instead of,
Hmm.
taken over as a service. Um, I do like to be able to chop those things up, and if we can, and we just need to be honest with ourselves. And
So,
sometimes
so
people
you
don't want to be that.
so you are going to prefer a team where everyone has their defined roles rather than something that's more up in the air and everyone's kind of just trying to help out where they can.
Exactly, because then you might just find chaos. Because who touched what code where? Yeah, we can all track that. Yeah, great. We can track who touched what where, but as long as I'm in charge of these areas, I can really devote myself to making those areas as the best I can be.
Cool.
So, just a question. In your current position, does the DevOps role intervene with the rest of devs? Is it the type of place where DevOps are in one place and development is in the other, or is it actually a mixed-up place and real DevOps? Because I've heard it all, and many places I think are still confusing that, right?
I've done it both ways. There have been times where I've been attached to a team, to a specific team, and I was taking care of all of their DevOps needs. And in my current position and others, I've been part of the DevOps team, and I'm basically
Hmm.
loaned out to where I need to be. And that really depends upon the amount of work you're going to have. Each company can take it differently. If they really do have a product that needs specific attention from their configurations management or DevOps needs, then it's good to have a dedicated person on that team. However, if I'm going to be sitting there just waiting on stuff, then I have better use of my time to be helping out other teams. So it really depends upon the company itself. Right now, with the company I'm working for with Sngular, I'm handling all of their projects because we have enough work that I can be loaned out to all of those products. And maybe
Makes a good
later on
use.
when they're up and running more, I might need to be more dedicated. But right now, I'm more of a generalist instead of a specialist as far as the product lines are concerned.
Sounds good. Makes good use of bandwidth, I suppose, right?
Exactly.
So just going down the list of all of our questions here, John, what type of impact are you hoping to have on like the tech world as a DevOps engineer yourself?
I hope to basically be able to make the lives easier of my developers, my QA, and my product owners. I don't want them to have to worry about the stuff that the developers are doing getting to the right place for the people who need to test it, and for it to get to the right place when the users actually finally get it in the end. That's always been what the goal has been. That's what the job is, to make sure that all that stuff is working smoothly in between. The developers can concentrate on developing. The QA people can concentrate on testing. They don't have to sit there and wait for stuff. It all works in between. Now that takes a lot of cooperation from those teams to make sure everything will work correctly. But if we can achieve that, then we've created something amazing.
Sounds great. Yeah, I'm gonna take the opportunity to thank you on behalf, because I have the same point of view, but from front end to the final client. But essentially, you're like my friend. You're the guys helping me out. So it's really, really good to hear.
John is the black box that we all push to, and then it just magically gets to where we need it to go.
Exactly.
Definitely.
Right.
Yeah. So next question here is, through the roles you've been in technology, I mean, what did you learn going through different clients in the non-technical part? I don't know if you know what I mean. Like, you maybe worked in banking or health. What are the non-technical concepts that you've managed to learn throughout IT?
So I started off at Equifax, and learned a lot about credit reporting, how the credit scoring worked, and that was an amazing role and a lot of fun. Next, I worked in document automation and had to learn about insurance companies and billing companies. Next, I've done lots of different jobs, but tax software was a huge one. Learning about taxes and how we process those, especially business taxes, and how that whole system works. That was an amazing journey, working for tax software, and I worked for several healthcare companies as well. So I have run the gamut on many different industries, and while I've learned a lot about those industries, I never became an expert in one. Like, I can't do people's taxes. I just knew how to consume data for taxes.
Now, are there any in any of those industries that you've worked for, have they ever had any like impact on the DevOps side of things? Like, I'm sure there have been in terms of like compliance and being able to do certain things.
Definitely, compliance was a huge part of things, but also workload. So think about the tax industry. They spend most of their time just getting ready for the next tax year. But as soon as January 2nd hits, H&R Block is going to be flooding our systems with tax returns, and all those tax returns would have to go through our system and then be sent to the IRS. Because we actually received all the tax returns from the major companies that were using that product, and they were major accounting firms and major CPA firms. So we had to be able to scale. And one thing that DevOps is really made for, and that's why it started becoming such a big thing so many years ago, was people wanted to be able to scale computing when they needed it. Because I didn't want to have 400 servers sitting around doing nothing from, May until December. So yeah, when April 15th is rolling around, you wanted your servers to be able to scale out tremendously, and you just have to. DevOps is all part of that, to be able to spin up servers. So we were beginning to start to use ESX hosts, so that I can sit there and just instantiate a copy of the server, deploy the software to it automatically, and make it available in a pool of machines that could be used for that processing power.
It's pretty nifty.
Yep. So I think one of the things we were going to ask is how DevOps appeared and how it evolved over time. I think through these questions we're kind of getting that, but you told us I made an assumption before when we were talking, and I just want to let the people know. Usually people think DevOps is people that come from sysadmins and now they're DevOps. It's not like that at all. You, for example, said you started as a dev, right? So how did you evolve into DevOps?
So I came out as a programmer and I worked for Equifax. I was coding for them, and then I went to a company called DocuCorp, and I was developing their software. I started off as doing some of their printer drivers and some of their core functionality. They actually had a small programming language within their product that we helped maintain and create new functions for. Now the problem was when I was creating these printer drivers, I basically would have to just copy them to some place, actually run them through the system, and actually print output and see if it looked right and see if my compares were correct. And I got so tired of copying that stuff out, copying out my new DLLs, and actually running compares against the known good output of the printer. So I started writing little tools that would help do that. I started writing tools that would deploy that software. Now this is the late 90s. So we were still, all servers locally within the system and such. And I just started writing these tools that made my life easier. I started writing tools that would automatically copy my code out and run it and run a batch job. And then I had made another tool which would actually do a comparison of the files to make sure that the printer output was correct. I made tools that make sure the output was correct no matter what system was coming from, because this was all coded so that it could work on OS 390, AS 400, Unix, Linux, Windows, whatever system was running on, it all created the same output. And so I had batch jobs and little utilities that would do that automatically for me. And so that's when I started.
And you fell in love with the efficiency of the whole process, right?
Exactly. If I could make it easier on me, and then I had stuff that would automatically send it out to QA, and you innovate like that, and you start getting, it's almost like workouts and exercising. You start getting addicted to it. You want to do it more and more and more. And so my next job after DocuCorp, I actually went into a configuration management role as well as developer. So I was doing half of their deployment and build creation, as well as developing for them as well.
So if we shift to the present right now, what are the main tools, practices, anything you could mention? Like right now, if you are telling somebody this is DevOps, what's your thing?
You go buy the book, The Phoenix Project. Everybody's DevOps has done that, and if you're a developer, you might like it too. There are follow-ups to that book as well. You want to take that study. It was a great book, and you learn what DevOps is. And I learned what DevOps was when I first went to that tax software company. There was a lady there who was a former QA analyst, and she was doing the builds for them. She had a little box that she could remote into. That was their Delphi build machine. And she would, when they wanted a new build, she would log into that box, download the code, start building it. And it was all on that machine, all set up correctly. And I came in and I was aghast because I was like, well, what happens if that machine blows up? What happens if that machine dies? How will you build? And she would take hours and hours and hours. And oftentimes it'd be the next day until they actually got to build the test. So the first thing I started doing was I ripped out everything they actually needed, built other virtual machines that could do the build. I created a build process for them in TFS, which is now Azure DevOps, and I made it so they could push the button and have a build come out. And this lady, she's like, you're going to automate yourself out of a job. And I was like, that is literally impossible, because once I automate this, they're going to want the next thing. And then they're going to want the next thing. So instead of taking just one tiny product, well, not tiny product, it was one of their main products, but I had their build automated completely. I went on to the next thing, and I went on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And by the time I get to the last thing that could technically be automated, they need changes for the original one. So you can't automate yourself out of a job. All you can do is become more efficient. And
no, that's a good
DevOps, it's a matter of automate everything. I should not have to do anything except push a button. I want you guys to push that button.
I think it's pretty interesting how, like, in this field alone, usually you see in today's world that if you have an automated process such as artificial intelligence taking over somewhere, that kills jobs. Well, here in DevOps, automation just produces jobs, and it says, hey, let's bring it on more and more and more. So just an interesting contrast.
There's so much more you can always do. There's always something you can do. There'll never be a perfect system, because once you actually have that all working, you go on to the next product. And then there's always changes that have to be made. And there's always systems to upkeep. So I'll never run out of work, even though I automate more and more and more.
Yeah, you got to fit it to the new type of process, right? It's like frameworks and front end or back end development. You have like the main things. You take out the boilerplate, but in the end, you got to do the business logic. Nothing automatically will do that for us. So I suppose
Exactly.
it's the same way.